Welcome to the Philip Wiley Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Philip Wiley.
Hello and welcome to another episode. I'm excited to have my friend Jeff Foley joining today. Jeff Foley and I know each other from InfoSec Twitter and the community itself, and we met for the first time last year during Black Hat and DEF CON. And so Jeff does a lot of great things for the community, has his OWASP Amass project, really great person, and I really love what he's done with what he does for the community and what he's done with his project. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. Had you on my old podcast, and so with your new version of Amass coming out, it only made sense to have you back on here and do something a little more technical. Some of the folks listening here, if you've watched the old podcast, it was geared more towards people trying to get started, and this podcast has a little more variety. It's not all just everyone's origin story or advice on careers. We decided to change things up a little bit and have some content that's a little more technical on there, so that way it serves the good of the broader audience and not just one small demographic. So this is it's gonna be very interesting. I know this is a major release of Amass that you came out with, but before we get into talking about Amass, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Who's Jeff Foley? Well, I would say I am a security researcher, right? That's how I was kind of brought into my career. It's what I've been doing for many years. It's what I love to do, but I also don't always get to do it anymore, right? So my day job these days is I'm vice president of research for ZeroFox, which is a company focused on external cybersecurity. I am the project leader for OWASP Amass, which I'm definitely quite committed to and spend quite a bit of time working on. And I still managed to carve out some time to be a adjunct professor for cybersecurity programs, because I don't know, have this weak spot about giving back to the community, trying to share what I've learned with people who are trying to break in themselves or enhance their careers.
So what drew you into information security?
So yeah, if I'm being completely transparent and showing my age here a little bit, it was during a time when the internet was pretty new, and I was intrigued. I just found it both amazing and maybe even intimidating, this idea of everyone connected to, potentially connected to everyone else, and what pros and cons could be coming from that. And I guess I just wanted to really be part of it. So when that happened and I had put my hands on it, I wanted to invest more in that being part of my future.
So kind of how did you get, because thinking of Amass and, the coding piece, because everyone's always wanting to know whenever they get started in information security, do they need to know how to code or program? So what got you started with coding and doing things like writing Amass?
Well, it certainly took a while to get there, right? But if we're still kind of thinking about what originally brought me into all of this, I did go to school for computer science. I selected a university that had a strong focus on telecommunications. So even their computer science program, it was very mixed in with the telecom, and it offered a lot of things on distributed systems and network programming, systems programming, a lot of Unix, teaching us about Unix and how that, supported the internet and things like that. So I learned a lot about that in school. I also had a part-time job as a network admin while I was at school, which led to some interesting tasking before it was over, that had to do with security. Because I'll admit, I didn't actually go into all this thinking I was going to pop out the other side as infosec. I mean, I thought I was going to be developing systems that would be communicating over the internet. That was my goal, and it was that simple at the time. But you said, how to get into coding. By the time I obtained that 4-year degree, it just kind of felt natural, right? I mean, I was already being accused of knowing C better than English and things like that. So I guess it was fluid by the time I finished the program.
Very cool. It's very interesting to see. And then, now how before people were going to school to code to work as software developers, but it's really interesting how people have really started working more on this automation piece, kind of like, you coming up with things to make your job easier to take the redundant, mundane stuff and automate it to make it easier so you can spend more of your time on more interesting stuff. It's really interesting that things have really shifted that way. People using AI and machine learning and different types of automation and orchestration to build up environments and all this. It's interesting how that's really evolved and it's become, more common. So that's definitely something that's needed. So as far as the OWASP Amass project, could you explain about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, again, I would say maybe it requires a little bit of a backstory for it to make sense. But so, like I said a moment ago, some of my work at the university got to be security focused. And to your point about automation, which is absolutely spot on, I would say almost everything I did kind of had an automation um, piece attached. It was, I guess I would describe it as a lot of the milestones in my career. If I looked back or reflected on, well, what caused that or why did that happen? A lot of it was really tied to automation. I took something that I knew how to do and codified it. So I didn't need to do it anymore. And whether that benefited me in the form of me getting my time back or whether it was bringing the additional value to the employer or customer so that now they could do it without me. Um, there were lots of reasons why me being able to take that and say, here, now you can do this as if it was me doing it. There were a lot of great benefits to that. And that included things such as those security tasks, being able to automate the monitoring and detection of the security violations and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I just got used to that, honestly. I got used to this feeling of, well, if I'm going to do it, then I need to get it into a program. I need to write it up, basically. And I just got used to that flow of doing things where I learned how to do it and then I learned how to do it without my hands having to be on it. So that led to my first job being in cyber warfare in research and development. And you said, well, so what's with OWASP or what's with OWASP Amass? It really kind of came from all these years that I was in that space doing that type of work. And I saw how important it was to have visibility on both yourself and anyone else involved, I'll say, in the contested environment or internet. And when I left that world and just joined, I'll call it commercial information security programs, and I saw how they were lacking in that area. To me, it was a calling for there needs to be additional awareness brought to this. Like we need to help these organizations and just security professionals see how important it is to have visibility on yourself and potentially it could be threat actors, it could be third parties such as vendors or suppliers, anyone who's involved in your security program or has impact on your security program. Really, you should have visibility on the situation so you can make informed decisions about these things. And when I saw that this was lacking, I don't know, I felt like I couldn't stop until I helped more people see the urgency of we have to do better with this. That's what OWASP Amass was all about. It didn't always start as OWASP. I got this started on my own, but when it started to move, I thought it needed to live with an organization like OWASP to help everyone understand that this wasn't about me. This wasn't a product. It was something that needed to be given to everyone to help everyone do better with this or have help with this.
Very cool. So yeah, it's interesting. And one of the things I would think one of the advantages to being an OWASP project was probably bringing more visibility to the project as well.
Absolutely. I mean, OWASP is such a great organization, and they've built such incredible reputation over the years. People trust their guidance and their standards and things like that. So by me, so I donated the project to them, but they, of course, it was great that they also understood the importance or the need, and that we were able to do this together to reach a larger audience, essentially. And I'm sure in some ways it brought some of that trust that OWASP has in the community to my own project and help us get it out there and have more people use it.
Yeah, just kind of something, a testament to the evolution and the prevalence of OWASP was back when I was getting started in application security back in about 2005. Used to, and I think they're still around, but you don't hear much about anymore. But there was WASC, Web Application Security Consortium, that you heard a lot of reference to that in some vulnerability scanners or different AppSec stuff. But once, now anymore, all you hear about is OWASP top 10. That's not all. The projects such as yours, OWASP top 10 for IoT and API. It's really nice the way they've kind of evolved with the times and technologies. Some people think, just web app, but it's not just web app anymore. It seemed to really advance past just the web app specialization.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it started right, as the name suggests. It was open web application security project, right? But of course now it's so much more than a project. It's a foundation, and their portfolio is far greater, as you said, than web applications. It's really anything that impacts security, information security, and there needs to be support globally, and it needs to be open and transparent and neutral, and so that everyone can reach out to an organization and get the truth about what they need to be doing about these security issues, and having best practices to go to and things like that. I mean, that's what the foundation is all about.
Yeah, that and keeping things vendor neutral, because sometimes you go to some specific products and they're going to recommend their product, and you don't always know whether it's the best interest of the user, or if it's some cases someone trying to sell a product. But that's one of the nice things. So how is Amass evolved? I know you come out with a major release recently, and so how have things changed?
Yeah, good question, because there's definitely been a lot of change. So some of that is because of all. So I guess what I didn't mention is, in case the people listening haven't used Amass before, it's been around for 5 or 6 years or so now, and it definitely seems to have reached a pretty large audience or user base. There's a lot of people using it, a lot of organizations using it. So over all this time where we've had the opportunity to see how well it's worked for all these people, and to get their feedback, it's because we've had quite an excellent community around this, where we've gotten some really great feedback from users. We just noticed we needed a more open data model to represent all this data that we're collecting about all these assets that we're finding on the internet. It needs to be agile so that we can change it quickly if necessary, or add things to it. But at the same time, it needs to be easy for people to access, whether that means to add their own data to it, or it could be just to be able to access and analyze the data to suit their use cases or needs. And for quite a long time, Amass was not doing this. It was rigid. It was fairly closed in how it was handling this. So it's been a while now. It's probably been a couple of years where I've been aware of this limitation. It's been nagging at me, and I knew we needed to have this like new data model so that we could represent all this information that we're collecting and give people what they really need. But it was a decent amount of work, right, to build this. So, you said what have we been up to, or what are we doing these days? Um, so when I joined ZeroFox, I was able to kind of propose this idea of, hey, this is a high priority. It definitely, there's a lot of users out there that need this in order to make better use of the data and to bring this into their own, like I said, use cases or possibly organizations. And ZeroFox immediately understood, or they saw how important this is, and they supported it. They said that they would help us build it and donate what was built back to the open source community. No strings attached, just here it is. We know everyone needs this. But it was really quite a large donation. I mean, they put quite a lot of engineering resources against this for somewhere between 4 to 6 months or something close to that. So it was definitely a investment, and they just gave it away. So I'm very impressed with that. I think it's very important that they did that, and now it's here, or at least the initial version of this is here. So that's what is so exciting about Amass version 4.0, is that this thing that's been kind of like a dream for a couple of years, it's not a dream anymore. It's real, and I can show it to you tonight. And actually, for what it's worth, it'd be the first show or event or anything like that where this is being demonstrated, other than, of course, just the documentation and things that are floating around out there. But there's been no show to go to, or say slide deck to go grab, to help understand what this is or how it works. So I guess maybe the best way to help with that, or to really just keep showing you what I mean, is I could show you how it works real quick, or give you an idea.
Sure. Yeah, that would be great.
All right. Well, let me do that. I'll share my screen. So I suppose this could be a lot potentially for anyone who's watching this that has never used this before, but hopefully it's not too much fire hosing. But for anyone who has used Amass before, I think you should quickly be able to understand what you're seeing or what's going on here. So what I did is I created a little directory here called Phil, and that's where I'm going to have the data go that's collected from the small enumeration that I'll kick off right now. So we'll see some things pop up in here when it's over. So let me do that. We'll just, so what I mean by that is we're in this directory called Phil. I'm just going to say, well, that's where we want the data to go for this enumeration, and we'll keep it small and simple. I'll just make it OWASP.org. But what that means, again, for anyone who hasn't used this before, so it's going to go look for assets that are exposed on the internet by OWASP.org, or that fall within the scope of that DNS namespace. And it's a pretty small enumeration. So kick that off. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting is I actually could have a second terminal open if I wanted, and I could show you the data coming in from this like immediately. Like as soon as this starts collecting things, I could start showing you what's coming in. The reason that's significant, or like why am I saying that, is you couldn't do that before in previous versions of Amass. You had to wait until it was finished. But the databases now they're safe to access concurrently. You can be analyzing what's coming in while it's still collecting more of the data. So this probably this should have quite a impact on the workflows of people who are used to using this, and before they had to work around the limitations, I'll call it, of how we had this implemented. But what you're seeing here is the new output that Amass produces. And let me just say right away, it's not meant for parsing. It's not meant for consumption to another program. It's really just meant for human eyes, like for you to look at it and say, is this what I think I should be seeing, or what makes sense here? Or is it finding all the things I expected it to find, or just ignore it? It's like you don't have to do anything with it, and you can make it silent if you don't want to look at it. But it's also in a format that's kind of important, though, because what you're seeing here is on the left side, this is an asset, and it tells you what kind of asset. It's a fully qualified domain name. And then it's saying, and it has a relationship, which in this case is a quad A record, to something else. It's a different asset, which is IPv6 IP address. And everything now in Amass exists in this way where it's an asset related to another asset. So there's a good reason why we're doing this. It wasn't because one day we just said we like this layout. It's because no matter what Amass collects in the future, it's always going to be with this type of model of something related to something. And we want you to see that regardless of what it is that it's collecting. And it's really the only general way we can print this stuff out, so that as all of these things expand and grow over time, that output will continue to hold, or will continue to work. Now, most people are used to seeing the output of the enumeration in a very different format, which you can still get if you want it, and I'll show you that right now. So, because you're probably, say, a bug bounty hunter or a red teamer, might look at this and say, "Oh wow, what am I supposed to do with that?" But if you go back to the tool and you go to the DB subcommand, and your goal is, well, I just want to see the names of what was collected from OWASP.org. Something's mad at me. I'm not sure what happened there, but he got mad at me. I assume you can still hear me, Phil, right?
Yeah.
All right. Something happened on my side. But right, if you want to see what came out of the enumeration, then just say, okay, the directory where the data exists is the current directory, and we want to see the names. And it'll show you the names. If you want to see everything that you used to be able to see, which, for instance, would be, you could say show, and you can say I want to see the IP addresses as well. You can do that too, and so it'll give you all the stuff you're used to seeing. A lot of these things will be moving, though. I'll let everyone know we're creating a repo called OAM tools, where anything that you do with the data, or whether that's print it out or analyze it or even manipulate it, it'll probably reside in this other repo. And this tool that you're used to using, that was a bit of a Swiss Army knife kind of tool, it's just going to be doing collection, which is why seeing the output of what it is collecting and saving does make sense, because that's all it's going to do. Is it's just going to kick off the collection process, and then you'll go to these other tools to start digging into the data and seeing what's being collected. But what you've seen so far, I would argue, is like this is what you used to do with Amass, or it's close to what you achieved with it before. But personally, and I think a lot of people in the community would agree with me, I see this as limited. It's only allowing you to do what we have determined you should be doing with the data. You know, we are making assumptions about your use cases, but like, what if that data, such as the names and the IP addresses, just aren't really what you need in order to answer the questions for your organization? Well, those days can be over now. That's what we're trying to do here with the open asset model. And let me give you a taste of what I mean. So in this directory where I stored everything, let me clear this. You can see that these are the files that were created because of the enumeration. We have the log, we have the text file, which is just same as the output that was printed to the screen. This is just something that came from a collection plugin, so we don't really need to talk about it, but it's just a temporary file that needed to go somewhere. But this is kind of the important file that you'll find in here is the SQLite file, which is the default database that's being used for the new Amass data model and the OAM. Although you can quickly and easily configure your Amass tools to use Postgres now, so that if you want a more centralized place to put all this, high performance, it's all yours. But for now, that's the file that holds the data that we just collected. So what if I just want to reach in there and ask my own questions? Like, you don't want to have to rely on us to determine what you're allowed to go see or to work with. What if you just know what you want and you'd like to be able to do it yourself? So, for instance, as a quick example, I can get the same list of names to be printed by just writing the select statement, right? Where I can say select, and I can say, now, of course, you could see our taxonomy to understand exactly what these things mean. But I say content name from assets where the type equals fully qualified domain name, and that's it. So notice fully qualified, the FQDN, we saw that when it was printing out the names during the enumeration. The only thing that's really new here, assuming you've looked at SQL before, is the fact that we've put some of this data into these JSON blobs. So it's stored as content, and then based on what type you're working with, you would go get the correct field. But if I execute this, you can go get the names yourself, right? And anything else for that matter. There's many other things being stored that are various relationships between the assets that are being discovered, and it's all available to you if you want to write the SQL yourself, or you could have someone help you write it and put it into a bash script or something like that, and now it'll do exactly what you need it to do. The other way to look at it too is there's nothing preventing you from inputting data that you acquired from somewhere else into your OAM database. Like, what if for whatever reason Amass didn't find it? Okay, so some other tool found it, and you can input it into the database, but now you still have your one. Let me get rid of the shared screen. You can still have your one place to get, say, complete visibility over the work that you're doing, or the environment. I'll call it the battle space again, or contested environment that you're concerned about, or external, exposure. All of this now is more manageable. It's more, instead of having to manage a lot of different output from a lot of different tools, you could just get it all into your OAM database. And that's where we're going with this, is we're kind of taking it in the direction of almost like a standard, or at least a standard or unified format where you can put it all in one place and know how to access it, because it's all going to look the same. I don't know. Is that a lot, Phil? A lot to take
No,
in.
that's fine. That's good. One of the things I'm kind of curious about too is, before you come out with Amass, how long was it taking you to generate the same data doing it manually?
Doing it manually.
Yeah, so if you were doing whatever other tools that you would use just doing to collect this data before you had create Amass, how
mm.
long would it take to generate that same data?
Oh yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, well, before I had any kind of automation around this, I learned how to do it back in the days of red teaming and like OSINT work that we did. And yeah, we were doing it manually, and it could potentially take hours depending on your target, right? Depending on how large they were and how much there was to go find, because you're either typing or clicking away to get all this, saving it, trying to organize all of it. Whereas when the computer can do it, and it's just following the leads, collecting all the data, putting it all into one, organized place, or one place in an organized way, it's far faster, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how long for instance, tiny target, obviously, but how long did that OWASP numeration take? A couple minutes or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. And so before that would have taken how long for that same size target?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, one problem was there was no really great tool for this
Mhm.
back when Amass was first created. There were a couple that were, trying to do this, but they left you with incomplete information. So I couldn't just fire off one tool, walk away, and say, "Oh, cool, when it's finished, I'll have what I need, and then do what I need to do with the output or parse it, whatever." I had to get it from many different places in order to kind of create the more complete picture. And what we quickly found out is even that wasn't really complete, because we found new ways to go get more of the data, which is why we felt the need to write our own tool that would make it easy to create plugins that could quickly add new techniques for finding more of the data. So hopefully, we're kind of taking a stab at, well, at least we'll try to have the most complete solution that will get us the largest amount of results or findings. And I think we kind of did that, but I mean, that's all. The title, or the original title of Amass, was in-depth, attack surface mapping, right? It was to try to find as much of it as we can using as many techniques as necessary. But I think what we found out is, yeah, that's great, but a lot of it is really about the data, right? It's about, well, what can you do with it once you've collected all this? Otherwise, you could just end up with a pile of thousands of findings, and unless you can analyze that or make sense of it or find anomalies in there, it could just be a lot of data to work with, and you're not quite sure what to do with it. So that's why I think the urgency kind of shifted, as I said, a couple of years ago, from are we collecting everything to how are we collecting it, and how are we able to use it, or use what we collected.
Yeah, and I can see the importance of tools like this because just like you look at the external attack surface market, kind of the where it was helping out is think back to days when you had to manually collect things on your attack surface to see what's new and how dynamic things are now. Marketing teams are spinning up microservices just for some ad campaigns. Maybe they don't get taken down, or someone puts up, some shadow cloud instance or other things, and trying to manage that's pretty difficult. So, you know, the need is something like this. Otherwise, companies may not have the budget to buy these expensive external attack surface management tools. So something like this is definitely helpful.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, to your point about with things being so dynamic, one thing we made sure was in our model for the open asset model is that the information about when it was first seen, when it was last seen, and making it easy to say, oh, clearly this relationship was in place, but at this point it shifted or changed to this, right? Like making it easy to see those changes to this very dynamic environment was important. And now it's so much easier because of the way we're storing all this. But at the same time, I just think we've kept it as simple as possible as well, so that we're not overcomplicating this. We're trying to keep the model as realistic as we possibly can, so that it doesn't create more work, let's say, or confusion. It makes it crystal clear what's being seen out there.
Yeah, I like the format makes it really easy to see everything. I like the colors. That way it's just not
Mhm.
one color and you're trying to, you know, really have to look at it to analyze what you're seeing. It makes it pretty easy to read.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just me, but I had to introduce the colors just because when I first created the output and I was looking at it without color, I think it was just hurting my eyes having to try to read that. It was
Yeah.
too much, right? But yeah, like you said, when you introduce the colors, it just makes it easy to uh, find the piece you're looking for, and even if it's moving on the screen, right? Uh, it's fairly easy to pick out what you're looking for.
So what's next for Amass?
Yeah. So, well, we have some big, almost like aspirations, I think, around the open asset model. I think now that it's here, the way we're looking at it is, but it's just the beginning, right? It's just at a state right now where it's able to support what Amass previously did for all of us. But that's the beginning, not the end. Now that it's here, it's working, everything is, I guess you could say, kind of like back to normal. Now we're going to be expanding it. We're going to increase the number of, say, different types of assets that can be represented. We'll be increasing the different relationships or associations between these assets on the internet, and how they can expose each other or make it possible for one to allow you to find the other. But um, perhaps what could be the most exciting thing that comes with that is, if we're going to have this open asset model with this very, say, growing or expanding taxonomy, we need to have a collection engine that also can expand quickly and collect for all this new information we're talking about representing, right? And that's the big thing that's going to happen for the rest of this year, and I imagine into next year, is we're going to be developing the Amass collection engine, which will do all this uh, by, I guess you could say, keeping up with the OAM, or the open asset model, so that for every asset type we introduce, Amass will be able to collect the appropriate data for that and populate the open asset model database. And that's kind of the big goal here, is keep expanding the taxonomy, keep expanding the collection capabilities, and do this in such a way that everyone using this agrees on how this should be represented. So we're trying to bring in the community, make this a community driven uh, effort, right? Where it's not just us doing this in a closed room somewhere. We're going to bring the right people in, get people involved, hear what people think about enhancements to the OAM, and try to grow this together, so that it represents what we all believe to be the way we need to see this, so that we're all speaking a common language here, and it makes it easier to communicate about what does an attack surface look like. Um, if I need your help with attack surface, how can I easily communicate my current situation to you, and you can communicate to me what you are seeing about my attack surface that I need to know and things like that, right? So, but we're in such a way that people know what to expect, and this is all very predictable and consistent in how it's handled, and everyone's kind of looking at it the same way. That's the key, I think.
Very cool. I think it's a great idea to get the input from other people, because you don't want to go out and build something that's not usable or people don't like. So it's smart to bring people in and collaborate to work towards something that everyone can agree upon and find useful.
Yeah, we've already received quite a bit of interest, and I've told people, I'm going to try to do this carefully. We'll set up the right organization around this if necessary to make sure that people are being heard. We're being careful in how we're doing this, so that it's really kind of being handled like a standard, right? I mean, that's how I'm willing to move forward with it, is that we'll do this right, and we'll do it carefully, so that, but at the same time, I expect it to be able to be agile enough that it adapts quickly to the needs of the community. So, it's a big goal. It's quite an undertaking, but I think it's important. I think it's needed right now in the attack surface market, and I'm willing to give it a shot so that we can all have a better way of communicating about exposed assets on the internet.
So for anyone that would like to get involved with the project, how could they find out more information and get
That's a great
involved?
question. Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can reach us, right? For one, of course, our Discord is kind of the hub of the community around this project, which I believe would be included in this podcast, or with this podcast. I think I shared all that, but
Yes.
definitely anyone feel free to jump to that Discord server, ask questions, ask us how to get involved, and we can quickly point you in the right direction. You can come to our GitHub, which has a lot of information there, including how to become a contributor. It has project roadmaps and things like that, things you could quickly start to use to understand how might you plug in or fit into what we're trying to do. Of course, the best way to find out, I would say, is just DM anyone that's already involved, and we'll happily tell you what we're doing and point you in the right direction. But of course, if you really just want to ask, say, me more about it, or you're just looking to find out like what's going on with this, why are we doing this, or why is it so important to all of you, you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Mastodon. There's a lot of places where you can easily look me up. I gave all that to Phil, and I'm sure he'll share it with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I welcome anyone who's interested in explaining to them what keeps us doing this every day and why maybe they'd want to do the same thing. Also, if you're going to be at Black Hat or DEF CON in a couple of weeks, then maybe you'll find me there. For instance, I'll be with Zero Fox at Black Hat, so you can definitely find me over there, or I imagine they could point you to me pretty easily. Or did I say that right? At Black Hat, right? At Black Hat,
Yes.
I'll be with them. Right, at DEF CON, I'm going to be at Red Team Village doing a workshop all about this. I'll be at Recon Village talking more about why are we doing this, why, what's going on with this, and how could it help people that are working with these tools all the time. And as usual at DEF CON, I'm always open to, if you just want to go take a walk and talk about this, I'm all for that. Yeah, and like I said, find me on those social media platforms, and we can arrange a time to meet up somewhere.
Sure. And as Jeff mentioned, this will be included in the show notes of the podcast, so you'll be able to find all information, as well as the link to the Discord server, the GitHub repository, and all the social media links.
Yeah, there's a lot of places you can find us. Of course, I guess if you want to take a more formal route, I mean, you can definitely reach out to OWASP for sure. There's ways to find us through their website. Um, our GitHub is linked to theirs. So, if you go to theirs first, you should be able to find this project and then make your way to our organization on GitHub. So there's a lot of ways to find us. And like I said, we run a very open community. I'd call it consistent with the way OWASP handles its projects, and are very welcoming of anyone that wants to be involved. You don't necessarily have to come as a guru programmer or something like that in order to support what we're doing. We have lots of things that we need to get done and lots of kinds of help that we could use. So I would say do not hesitate if you find this interesting and you would like to be part of it, because we don't deny help. I think I get a lot of people worried that, they say, oh, I find this interesting, but I don't think I could help. And I think we quickly determine that there's always a way people can help if they want. So I would say don't hesitate to reach out and discuss it with us.
So is there anything you'd like to share before we close out the episode?
I mean, in case it's not obvious, I mean, I just think this is a very important cause. I think, perhaps it sounds, like something you've heard 100 times, but you can't be protecting things if you don't know they're there. I mean, we have to have better visibility on these attack surfaces in order to know that we're protecting them correctly, and just to be proactive with our security as opposed to waiting for something to show up. There's so many ways that if you're monitoring your attack surface, you can look at it as the, adversary would and predict what could come from them abusing it, right? It's like it becomes so much easier to make these decisions when you're taking this proactive approach. So I just feel very strongly about that cause. I would say there's a lot of people out there that have shown that they believe in that by being users of this project, which over the years, we've seen how huge that is. But if there's any way you think we can be doing better with it, right, or expand how we're handling this, let us know. We welcome all the feedback from the community. It's really been the driving force for this project throughout the 5 or 6 years that we've been running it. I don't think it would be where it is today if we didn't get the honest, transparent feedback that we've been getting, and we welcome more of it. We're looking forward to more of it.
Well, thanks for joining today. It's an honor to get to be one of the first to be able to present your new version of Amass. So thanks for joining and doing that.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show. We're definitely excited to be able to be here and talking, to be able to discuss this with you, Phil. And we're looking forward to all the people hopefully we'll also be talking with at Black Hat and DEF CON about it, because it definitely seems like a lot of people are being impacted by this, and well, we'd like to help more people. When I say we, it's all the people that are part of this project too. In case I wasn't crystal clear about that, this isn't my project anymore. I mean, maybe it once was, but there's so many people that are contributing to it. I mean, this is OWASP's project, and there's a lot of important contributors, and it's really the community now that owns this and is moving it where, taking it where it's going. And I like it that way, because like I said, I want the goal of this is to serve the community and to bring the awareness and assistance to the community that it needs. So you said, what was my last point I wanted to make? I mean, that's what it is, really. It's that this is all about the community. It's about empowering everyone to handle this better. And yeah, thank you very much for allowing us to speak about it on your show.
Yeah, it's an honor. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to The Philip Wiley Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Philip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter @Philip Wiley. Until next time.